Just 3 days ago, US climate envoy, he calls himself a czar, John Kerry, hailed the last-minute climate pact between Washington and Beijing as crystal clear and ambitious. According to Kerry, the deal, manufactured on the sidelines of the Glasgow Climate Summit, was evidence that China means business on emissions reduction. Today proved, though, that China is playing Kerry and the Biden administration for fools. According to wealth management firm Bernstein, for China to reach net zero emissions by 2060, they are 60, not 50, as promised by President Xi Jinping, it'll need to spend at least $6.5 trillion on green technologies over the next 4 decades. That amounts to more than $160 billion a year, which is double what China spent in 2019. For his analysis, I'm joined by the environmental editor at the Australian newspaper, Graham Lloyd. Well, Graham, it doesn't stop, does it? I mean, we could talk about this stuff every single day, but if China is the world's biggest emitter, we've got to keep them honest. That net zero pledge, net zero credibility, or should we take them on face value?
Well, I think what we have to accept is that China has agreed to keep talking to the US. It's set a target to be carbon neutral by 2060. Whether it can get there or not is a work in progress. The bottom line is the best advice in life is follow the money. And with this decarbonisation, nothing could be truer. So the estimates that have been put about today of $6.5 trillion over 4 decades probably is an underestimate. The other thing is they probably haven't worked out yet how it can be done. But the thing that happened at the Glasgow talks that not a lot of people picked up on, but this $100 billion a year fund that we've spoken about in the past, that's only for the first half of this decade. And after then, the sum of money is supposed to increase. And China, India, Brazil and like-minded countries made it clear during these talks that in the next couple of years, they are going to see put in a claim for $1.3 trillion per year from developed countries from the end of the decade. So China's estimated cost of transition, that's only a fraction of the money that they're going to be asking for.
Good Lord, the more you get into this, the more you realise the bankers and the elites will get rich. I tell you what, and China will only get stronger. Let's go to Europe. I want to have a look at Europe, where this energy crisis is continuing to bite. Germany's just suspended the certification of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. This is the pipeline that runs from Russia, and that's obviously sent the gas prices skyward. Have a look at this tweet from a Bloomberg correspondent. In Britain on Monday, wind generation collapsed to its lowest level in 57 days, forcing fossil fuels to step in and pick up the slack. And of course, if you recall, Graham, Britain's climate modelling, this is Treasury modelling in their case, of course, all predicted the net zero emissions target. Windy days, more and more windy days were needed to make up for the fall in fossil fuels. Well, good luck there. Clearly, that's not material now. But of course, it was also this massive expansion of nuclear. Renewables just feel like, to me, this window dressing component in a lot of these plans. The real heart of the plan is nuclear.
Well, I think the experience is, and it's been a surprise to a lot of people and a disappointment, who have all been told that if you build enough wind turbines and you locate them over a big enough distance, then the wind's going to be blowing somewhere, so it'll all be all right. The real world has shown that that's actually not the case. There's windmills all over Europe and they're suffering a wind drought over Europe in its entirety. Nuclear ramp up is now seen as something that is critical, both in China, in Britain, in America, everywhere, but that's going to take time to come about. The immediate issue now is keeping the lights on in Britain over the coming winter. There's 2 things going on. One is that the world's come out of the pandemic and there's a big demand for gas, particularly through Asia. So there's a squeeze on global supplies. And then there's a geopolitical issue with Russia trying to get permission for new gas pipelines into Europe. It's having some problems, so it's squeezing the price and limiting the supply to try and exert a bit of leverage there. What this says is this is not a stable state of affairs going forward. They really need to have an energy security really plan to avoid what could be a catastrophe if things don't improve.
I think it's a portent of decades to come. Let's have a look at another issue too. I remember when they first came into London about a decade or so ago, a lot of big city woke mayors love them, the so-called ultra-low emissions zones, taxes on petrol vehicles whenever they go into inner urban areas and go into the CBD. They say it's all about improving air quality. Well, as it turns out, they don't work. This is according to an Imperial College study of London Mayor Sadiq Khan's policy. The study says it's only marginally improved air quality in the 3 months after it was implemented in April 2019. That's pretty telling.
And this is one of the big issues, that a lot of the costings for the reason to decarbonise and change cars to battery cars and other things is improvements in air quality. So they extrapolate from that the cost of hospital admissions for breathing difficulties and that sort of thing, and say, well, you're going to save all this money if you make the transition. Here's a bit of real-world analysis of what happens. And I guess the one obvious thing to say is that the atmosphere is connected, so you can make actions in one place and it doesn't change everything. But it's really showing that the potential benefits are overcooked. The solution that they're coming up with here is to say, well, let's expand the areas where you can't do these things. So it's really just another Trojan horse to tell people what they can and they can't do. And really there should be some rigour put into determining whether the benefits are real or imaginary.
Thank you for that very comprehensive wrap there, Graham. Thank you for your time as always. Graham Lloyd there, environmental editor at the Australian newspaper.